On March 23rd, industry experts came together in Frankfurt across performance and health, tactics and coaching and scouting. Hear what questions our industry experts had for each other.
I think we should be challenging people's intuition. And I'm not saying intuition is a bad thing, but we should challenge people to redirect their time, attention, and intuition into the action rather than in the data gathering and, the understanding of the opponent. People are constantly asking themselves, have I watched enough footage, particularly in a time crunch position in the season where you've got lots and lots of games. You could be risking either missing trends if you're not watching the right game or wasting a load of time reviewing content that's just irrelevant. Will be asking themselves, have I missed anything? There's always this bias towards what information is viewed first to then how the rest of that story or research unfolds about an opponent. And then at the end of the day, you're looking back thinking, is my work actually good enough? Is it what the coach is looking for? You need that validation piece. How can we challenge and validate that what we present to coaches and then to players is the right thing that's going to influence the results on game day? We see a lot of shelfware in sports, tech that gets bought but never used. What is the biggest barrier you face in getting your product to actually change a practitioner's daily workflow?
I guess most of the people in football have seen lots of products and they don't have the time to really dive into it and understand it. So I guess the most important thing is that the product has to be intuitive, because lots of people in clubs want to use new products, but it has to work directly and immediately. So they have to be really, really intuitive so that it has a great impact on the entire club. What is the most underestimated factor in sports technology?
I think the most underestimated factor in sports technology is that of implementation. What I mean by that is sports clubs, sports teams all over the world have got coaches, support staff, they've got their daily processes that they'll follow. And I think that when it comes to implementing sports technology, whether that's for strength conditioning coaches, sports scientists, physiotherapists and so on, the flexibility and the customization of that implementation should never be underestimated. Every team will have similar things that they collect from a data point of view and similar processes that they might follow, but at the same time they'll all have their own nuances. So actually that flexibility when it comes to sports technology and implementation of it, I think is really important. How has the advancements in generative AI enhanced his daily processes at Catapult?
Yeah, I can be very honest here. I think AI has led me into R, for example. So that was the first time I was actually involved with more advanced computer programs, going into the statistical bit, into the scripting and all that sort. So without it, it would have never been possible for me. So just with that, I unlocked a lot more possibilities, not just in general, but then especially also with Catapult, working with our API. So much more possibilities all of a sudden, and it's like the box of Pandora that basically just opened, all with the help of ChatGPT or other agents coming into place here. What aspect do you think we will never be able to measure with data in team sports that's still very, very relevant?
Well, I think to be fair, I think a lot of things can be measured, but I don't think a player's reaction to setbacks that are not related to football can be measured very well. So we have so often a discussion about if a player is becoming a father or they get children, for example. How does that, obviously we know and we can measure how that affects sleep quality and so on, but in terms of how that changes a person, how that affects you from a day-to-day basis, I do not think that can be measured in the way we would want it to be measured. Biggest problem you faced in building out your current workflow and process within your field?
I think our biggest problem has been scalability. Ultimately, as an example, we provide one-to-one support across the Champions League and the Women's Champions League. That's close to 250 games of live support with a live analysis rig. and trying to ensure that we have the people in place to allow the right decisions to be made throughout a game to influence decisions throughout that is probably been the biggest challenge in our process.
One thing you changed your mind about in the last 12 months?
Something I've changed my mind about in the last 12 months is probably how I approach our team training sessions. When I initially started, I was certainly quite reductionist. I was quite regressive in how I would pass information on to the head performance coaches or the head coaches, and I would often be sat there thinking big numbers equals bad. And because you were the key stakeholder in these numbers when you're working with the GPS and being the primary person that's working with the GPS, you feel like quite a lot of responsibility on your shoulders if someone was to pull up with a soft tissue injury, or if there's a non-contact injury somewhere on the pitch. A lot of the eyes would sometimes be on you as the holder of the GPS units and the person that works with all the data. But in those 12 years, I've realised that's probably the wrong way to be. Well, I think it's definitely the wrong way to be, and now I'm far more aggressive and assertive in the way that I work with the performance coaches and I work with the head coaches to try and, similar to earlier point I made, to try and make sure that when we're playing the game, the game is a step down for us, and we have players that don't just survive a game of rugby union, they thrive in it. And obviously you do it in relative times. You do it when it's sensible to do so. You don't do it when it's one day out of a game. You don't push players there. But I think in the last 12 years, I've certainly been less afraid to push and far more reluctant to pull players in terms of their training demand. I think you can then create probably quite a lazy environment if you are stopping players when they hit a certain threshold, rather than seeing, well, safely, how far can we take them in their training progress, and how far can we actually push this player in this pre-season stage, or even in an in-season stage if they're not playing. And there's a lot of chat about GPS and sports science when it was first integrated in kind of football, and you get these old footballers that say they get upset when players are in the red zone, or something that suggests a number on a sheet should stop them from training. And I think that's quite a reductionist way of looking at things as well, and that's probably quite an old school way of an older player or an older coach looking at new technology coming in and thinking it's ruined the game. But it's ultimately with the person that's behind it, and I think I've left that kind of practice behind me now, and I certainly feel a bit more assertive in how I can push players using our data, because we have that safety blanket of numbers and information. Has the growth of data in sport created more noise rather than more clarity?
I guess myself and a lot of the people who will be at the event, we look a lot at LinkedIn or Twitter, trying to find like new research papers, new visualizations, new metrics, stuff like that. And I believe that is where the noise is, and that is actually like hurting a bit the environment. Because I have found really nice metrics in really bad visualizations, or the opposite, like really nice visualizations, but in the end they give you nothing. Also some papers, but are not papers, just people publishing on their blogs and stuff like that, making absurd conclusions on things based on data that is not actually telling that. I don't know how to put it, but yeah, like there's a lot of things going on LinkedIn that you shouldn't always believe what is in there. And yeah, it's also overwhelming. Like you see a bunch of different tools, new libraries, new metrics, and just a bunch of people trying to get in the sector, because yeah, it's football, it has a lot of fans, and there's a lot of that in LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram, I guess. So yeah, that's my answer. Within your team, do you have to support your conclusions with data, or do you reach your conclusions using the data?
It's rarely black and white for us, and it strongly depends on the practitioner I'm working with. We all know what we would like to do, but too often we are supporting the conclusion especially with the football coaches still. So yeah, we're also driving the change towards the other end, but yeah, that's still the reality in football. Which is the one data piece that you would like the coaching staff, technical staff, to use and understand even more?
I think understanding that the internal response to training load and the measures we have on internal responses are the driver of where the players are at, rather than the external load of what they've done that area. If technology could do one thing to make your work life easier, what would you want it to do?
Yeah, so I think for me, if technology could magically make my work practices better, for me it would be seamless integration of multiple data sources into a single entity that can be interrogated, overlapped, dissected like seamlessly in I would say like a way that facilitates curiosity and insight. I think a big time drain at the moment is attempting to pull data from multiple different sources and not having a fully coherent system, an enjoyable system to meld and to merge all those data sources together. What advice would you give an early career practitioner who was beginning to work in your sport for the first time and had no experience of your specific sport?
I think you can't go too far past curiosity. I think if you have a curious mind and a curious lens, then you can fast track in any industry by taking on as much information. And on top of being curious, you need to have an open mind to what you find. And I think if you have that approach, I think that can be a really successful foundation.